Hey everybody, my name is Keith Kauffman. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the police chief here in the lovely city of Redondo Beach. I was born in the city of Redondo Beach back when we had a South Bay hospital. I grew up here in the South Bay, attended West High, El Camino, then I moved on far away to UCLA, and then even farther to Cal State Dominguez. So as you can see, I've spent basically my entire life around here. I started policing in the city of Hawthorne. Shout out to all my friends there. I know you're watching. Back in the early 90s, post Rodney King era. And I was there up and through about 2015. You know, in those 22 years that I spent in Hawthorne, I kind of developed my own philosophy of policing and public safety. I saw things that worked and I saw things that didn't. Many of the things that we thought worked, they may have worked, but they worked temporarily. I think policing at one point in my tenure was really, how do we put a Band-Aid on a problem and move on to the next one, only to see that that problem would quickly arise again. But throughout my time in Hawthorne, I started to learn that there were a few things that I valued more than others, where I thought it really made a difference in our profession and pushing us forward. Those two things are community engagement and innovation. Truly engaging with the community, having a true community policing agency is much different than just having a community policing department or something written on a piece of paper. But true community policing and true community engagement is a hard thing to commit to. But I saw that when you did, the relationships that you would build could really push your agency forward in the community, and it would help you solve problems no matter what those problems were. And the last thing was innovation. Stagnation in law enforcement, just like many public service agencies, I thought it was terrible. Why aren't we doing things? Why aren't we trying things? Why is the private sector doing this, yet we can't seem to pull it off just because we're in government? So innovation really became a value of mine. What I want to speak to you today about are the two things that I feel are the most important that an agency head can do for their public service agency. And that's create a vision and create value. I've never understood why, when I ask many of my cohorts in public safety, what's your department's vision? I never understood why they didn't have one. Sometimes we would ask that on a promotional exam and someone would rattle off some mission statement that had 3 or 4 paragraphs and they'd mess most of it up. And the reality is that does nobody any good. If you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what your call to action is within your certain agency, what you're going to do is you're going to be happy with the status quo. That's the problem with public safety. It inherently breeds mediocrity. Our system doesn't reward excellence and innovation. Basically, the longer you stay, the more you get paid. And that's a good way to project to the men and women that work in this industry that it's okay to maintain the status quo. But we all know public safety is expensive and it's not okay for our communities. You have to create a vision. Look at Tesla, for example. Their vision, accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Super simple. I bet you that every Tesla employee knows it. Coca-Cola, refresh the world and to create value and make a difference. Very simple. Walmart, save money, live better. Why doesn't public safety have a vision? Why don't we tell our men and women where we're going? Well, here in Redondo, we do. We got together, we created a vision, and that vision is we are the community leading the way in law enforcement. Now it's simple. Everybody knows it. Everybody that works here can repeat it. In fact, I won't hire somebody unless they know it, understand it, and can tell me how they're going to contribute to it and help push that vision forward. When we say we are the community, what we're saying is we want to be one with the community, completely involved, embedded no matter what the issue, or even if there's not an issue. In fact, the way to build relationships is not to do it in a time of crisis. It's to do it when you have time to sit down and find a common ground with the people that you're working for. We have sayings around here like, if it happens to you, it happens to us. And what we try to do is reward our men and women for finding ways to better engage the community every day. That's the first part of our vision. The second, leading the way in law enforcement. That's the innovation piece. Why do we have to settle for what we do just because that's what we do and that's what we did before? Our vision helps empower people. It creates a culture where it's okay to fail as long as you fail forward. When I first got to Redondo and we put our vision in place, one of the first things I wanted to do was to see who took a risk and who failed at it. And once that happened, I told everybody that worked here, I want to see that person in my office, not to put them down, but to reward them for taking the risk and showing others that it is okay to do so. When you have a vision and you have this call to action and you can create an era of empowerment and people know where we're going, the vision should answer the question, what should we be doing right now? When someone comes into the office and they say, hey, boss, I'd like to try this or I'd like to do that, I'll always ask them that question. What part of our vision does that support? And if they can tell me what it does and we can afford it or there's no other major obstacle, then I'm always going to say, well, let's try it. The beauty about having a vision is that it creates value. And this is where public safety needs to focus. It's so upsetting when I see agencies be compared to one another on a dollars and cents level. I see a fire department and they're looking at moving the county fire department in and they're looking at it at dollars and cents. To me, that makes no sense. We should be looking at value. If you're looking at mere dollars and cents, it's quite possible that those agencies have not created value. And what I mean by value is, if there was a linear line and we have this much time, this is how much time we're allotted to do what we do in public safety. Over here, this little fraction of time, that's what we have to do. Every police agency is the same, every fire agency is the same. Radio goes off, we react, we go to our call for service. That's what we have to do. But the rest of this line, the part over here, that's what we can do. And that's where you create the value. If you dedicate time, resources, money, everything into this section of where you can be, that is where you're going to find your innovations. That's where you're going to attract people to your agency. That's where you're going to create value in your community. And that is how the culture of your agency is going to be defined. How come public agencies aren't all the same? They all have different cultures. Most of it is defined not in that small section of what we have to do, the reaction. It's in the proactive section of what we can do. And here at Redondo, that's where we focus because that's how we provide value. In fact, if someone asks me, and this is a hard question to answer, ask your chief of police or your fire chief, what is your job? What do you actually do? I've thought about that a long time. The best answer that I've ever come up with is, my job is to ensure the men and women that work for me create value in the community. In other words, they're not just warming a seat, they're not maintaining status quo. I'm finding ways to have them push our vision forward, to feel that the selflessness of the badge, the commitment to public safety and public service, that's the reward. And if they create value in that system, thus creating value for our community, then I'm doing my job. The benefit of having a vision and focusing on what we can do and creating value is that when these intersections come up where law enforcement is, faced with whatever the next dilemma is, instead of approaching that intersection and just hitting it at a red light and not knowing which way to go, because we've only been doing one thing, reacting to problems, what a lot of agencies are going to do is they're either going to blow through the intersection, they're going to blow through that red light, crash and burn. A lot of them are just going to make a U-turn and go the other way. But the ones that have vision and the ones that have value, they find a way to merge with the other directions. Every intersection has generally four components. So if you're approaching from the south and the way that you've created value within your agency allows you to work with other entities out of the box, other people, figure out how law enforcement and public safety fits into the big picture, then you'll find a way to merge with the people approaching from the north and from the east and from the west. I thought of a couple examples of this, and one would definitely be homelessness. So we've had homelessness throughout my entire career, but lately, as we all know, it's become a crisis. There's many things that cause that. Today is not the speech to go into it, but when Redondo Beach PD approached the intersection of homelessness, rather than bust a U-turn, we figured out how we were going to merge. And I truly believe it was our vision and the creation of value that allowed us to make that merger. Rather than just focus on what the average law enforcement agency would do, which would be enforce, we started figuring how to turn enforcement into a solution. And we did that by working with all of our partners, city leadership. Our city manager created a task force. Our politicians went out and got grants through agencies like the South Bay COG. We hooked up with Harbor Interfaith to get housing navigators, PATH, Exodus, the Public Defender's Office, the judges, the city attorney's office, you name it. We brought everybody together and got on board and said, how can we help solve this problem? And we started making headway there. It's because our merger into that intersection was open. And then, of course, COVID hits. And what could be worse? We're finally making progress, and now we're faced with this next intersection. Well, rather than hit a U-turn, we talked with all of these people and came up with the idea, why don't we move the court out of the courthouse and into the open, bring it here to the city, and we'll hold our homeless court outside so that we can continue the forward progress. And it took a tremendous amount of work. The police department's not going to take credit for any of this. The amount of work that went in with our public works department, our city attorney, our political leaders, everybody, they had seen the vision and they saw the progress and the value, and they were dedicated not to let it stop. So we were able to keep the ball rolling and bring homeless court here to the city. What I want to get back to is making sure that when you go into a public agency, you don't look at it as, hey, I'm just going to maintain the status quo and keep myself out of the paper. You've got to create a vision. By the time you guys see this, I'll be turning the chapter in the next book of my, or the next, what did I just say? I'll be turning the chapter in the book of my life, I guess. And that next chapter is going to be very interesting because I've been asked to move over and look at the fire department and become the acting fire chief there. Well, obviously, I wear this uniform. I don't wear that one. So needless to say, I'm a little bit nervous. However, what do you think my first order of business is going to be? It's going to be to go in there, talk to the men and women, figure out what values they already create with the community, and then really lean into how do we create a vision moving forward. I'd like to thank you for your attention today. I hope that this is something that you can bring back to public safety, and thank you for all the work that you do. Appreciate it.